Hello, hey everybody. Thanks for joining. We are here for another community AMA. I think the timing's really great because there are some interesting things happening and we're getting a lot of questions. We could almost call it the community FAQ AMA. So excited to talk about and address these questions. Also, one of our goals is to get more and more of the core team members here to meet you and meet the community. And I think you've noticed that both in the Twitter Spaces and the AMAs, you're getting to see and meet a lot of people on the core team. So let's do some quick intros here. I will start up. I'll start down here with Spring. Spring, please introduce yourself.
Hi, everybody. I'm Spring. I'm the Director of Marketing at SKALE. I've been with SKALE since November last year, so celebrating my 1-year anniversary and looking forward to my first AMA with everybody.
Awesome. Thanks, Spring. All right, John and Connor.
Thank you. Hey, everyone. John Frost, Director of Solutions Engineering. My role is working with the validators, working with the dApps and the partners, and I've been with SKALE for about 1.5 years now. Time flies. Connor.
Wow. And I'll round it out. Hey, everyone. Connor Murphy. I'm head of sales. I've been at SKALE for now a little over 3 years and really excited to dive in here.
All right, awesome. So hey, first thing I want to do is just really clarify the role of the core team in a decentralized project. So we get a lot of questions saying like, are you doing this? Are you doing that? And one, this is an open source decentralized project. So we as a core team, we don't run a single server. We can't make any direct changes to the code. Okay, so any sort of smart contract upgrade requires a decentralized multi-sig. Any sort of upgrades to any server end up being upgraded directly by validators, as opposed to us being able to wave a magic wand. And I say that because in one hand, we are incredibly empowered to help the project, but on the other, our main job is to help the community because the community owns SKALE. And the validators run the network, and ultimately the dApp developers are who we're all trying to serve as people here working and supporting the network. And I like to think of token projects more in the long term. They're more like weighing machines, and the value of these things over time comes from the real utility. And so our goal is to keep making SKALE's already incredibly utilized to secure the network. And the next version of payments is kicking in for SKALE chains as the network gets into the next stage of growth. So anyways, the market's in a tough, turbulent time, but we are pumped every day to come here and honored to be able to work for this project and actually work and support everybody who is participating in the network. Everyone from every dApp developer to every validator and every community member. So So anyways, wanted to clarify that, and now let's kick it off. So first thing, had a lot of questions about, and I'm gonna handle the first two questions, and then we're gonna go on to the other team members. So lots of questions about the data and the stats. So yes, there are now 12.78 million transactions on the network. So the network is humming. We are and it's amazing to see this. Sorry, 12.78 million in the last 30 days, 26.7 million in aggregate. So this last month, we've already done 12.6 in the month of November. And in October, there are only 5.7 million transactions. So, the question is, why do we care about that? Why do we think that's important for the network? Well, it's because SKALE is built to support high volume transactions. That's why we care about speed. That's why the gas fees are effectively paid by developers who are renting the chain. There's still a payment, but it's not the end user. And that model helps SKALE have a more cost-effective and sustainable low-cost effort. And that caters very well to certain types of applications that need a lot of transactions. So when we see that, those are signs that there's successful product and there's successful implementation happening and utilization of SKALE. Okay, so we're pumped about that. And this is not, hey, as there's also 107,000 users in the last 30 days, which is up. In the month of October, there were 39,000 active addresses. So we're pumped about that growth. And hey, as the core team, we get excited seeing this, but it's really a community effort. We're going to talk a lot about community today and the role that a lot of people are playing outside of the core team. And again, our job, we kind of feel like we're facilitators, and we work night and day, but we're working to help get the community going and make this thing successful as a group. Okay. All right. So first question, one of the most popular questions, and I receive this a lot. I bet someone calls me every day and asks about it. What is the impact from FTX fallout and this whole market contagion and just this, what's happening with the market? And, it's obviously a really tough time, scary. And first and foremost, I just want to say my heart goes out to anybody who is personally impacted by BlockFi, by Voyager, by Vol, by FTX, and people who have assets that, are stuck. And I have a lot of, close personal friends as well. But, we also know we have a lot of community members that were impacted. So one, we have empathy, and, it just frankly pisses us off to see these things happen in the space. We're the builders. We're here trying to support developers, and, seeing this greed component and over leveraging is really a shame. So now, thankfully, we have zero direct impact. I would say direct impact, because we don't work with FTX. We don't work with Alameda. The foundation or SKALE Labs, we have zero contracts with them. A lot of projects utilize Alameda for market making services to have tight SLAs on spreads across different exchanges, and we thankfully didn't. Also, a lot of projects store and custody assets with FTX, or have FTX as investors, and they're, I think, in a different level of probably sustained challenges they're going to face. So thankfully, SKALE wasn't impacted. Now, we had a lot of token holders and different people who purchased tokens that have tokens that were in places like Genesis and FTX, I imagine, and that's, just the industry it feels the pain together. So, but thankfully, there's no direct impact. We're in good shape. So I also tweeted about this the very first day, and you can go read that tweet if you have any questions. All right, now, hey, let's move past this. I think every day online, you can read as much as you want about the market contagion and the bad news. And, we're here to talk about building. We're here to talk about real questions, and we have questions from community partners. All right, so we're going to talk. We're at first question here for John. This is from Degus. It costs integration time before dApp can launch on SKALE. Are there any near plans to make this more automated? John, do you want to handle that one?
Yeah, I'll handle that question. And yeah, thanks for highlighting that. I think that we prize ourselves on being very receptive to the community. So if anyone in the community has suggestions for us, reach out to us. We're open for these discussions. Discord, GitHub. You can file some, commits there and just talk about, what strategies or ideas you have. We actually recently were at the ETH SF conference, and we actually did a talk on community tools. I'm positive that you can find that. If not, I can link it in the comments below. But that was just talking about community tools and what we're doing with developers and our partners just to make the onboarding process easier. And also recently we did one with ChainSafe, just showing how you can mint NFTs. What's been going on with Scale, and just like also again the community tools and so forth. So we are very receptive to that. We do have things like a S-Fuel faucet. We do have a Scale Chain UI, which is essentially like a GUI, a dashboard where you can go in there and just tweak some things and see what's going on with the dashboard. Again, I'm happy to kind of like highlight the links to those, but I think one thing that's come out very recently that we've got a lot of attention from is our hubs model. So we have different hubs for like gaming, we have different hubs for NFTs, community, and obviously the DEX as well. So we're seeing massive growth there. And that is obviously managed by a multi-sig owner. So there's a lot of instead of having a Scale chain, you're joining this hub. So there's a lot less work for, onboarding and so forth. And everything is obviously secure and so forth. So we're definitely seeing a lot of current dApps partners kind of, working to that approach. So I think that answers the question there.
Yeah, that's, and I want to summarize one thing that I think is just really important is when you think of Scale, each chain has more capacity than pretty much any other EVM chain. And so you look at our competitors and they have one chain and you can see how many transactions they can do. And they literally are capping out each day. And each Scale chain can do more than these entire blockchains. And Scale is a blockchain, right? And we have 18 of them live in the network. Now, the interesting thing here is that it takes a while to set up a blockchain. So are we going to have if we have 1,800 dApps, should we have 1,800 chains? Well, the answer is no. And so hubs add value because immediately once the chain's already set up, other apps can come join. And so part of this, Scale it's almost like a railroad. It takes a long time to just get these rails in place, and then you can get lots of trains going through them. And that's really where we are now. So the hub model, I'm really excited about the Nebula Hub for gaming, really excited about Calypso Hub for NFTs that just went live, and the community chain that's going live as well. All right. Thanks, John. All right, next question. This is from Natalia084. Do you agree that the power of community will lead your project to globally? DeFi and crypto is growing very fast, becoming competitive. So what are we doing, Spring, to attract more community, grow more community, and in general market?
Sure, that's a great question. And a community is absolutely everything. It's huge. We have a lot of work to do on educating the community, and that's really where it comes into play. And I couldn't talk about community without giving a shout out to the Scalians. We see you guys. We appreciate you so much. You really are a great asset for us. So I also want to bring up our ambassador program, which we've recently onboarded a few new languages, but we currently have 15 languages on a global level. And they're really there to, support us locally, transcribe all, our educational pieces into local languages, and just really getting the word out on an international level. We recently brought in a Spanish and Philippines ambassadors, so very excited to get them on board. So great. Community is huge. And, what are we doing to attract more community, and what events are we doing? Events are super important for us. I'd say hackathons are probably our first and foremost. John mentioned ETHSF. We have a really great relationship with ETH Global, who do fantastic hackathons. And they just released their schedule for next year. So we'll definitely be participating in some of those hackathons, meeting a lot of the developers. We do participate in conferences. We're still deciding on schedules next year, but anywhere where we could go, really talk about scale, talk about the architecture, how we're different, how we're better. It's important for us to be there. And another piece I want to touch on is also, we're attracting people in regards to content, really education. It's so important to make sure everyone understands how Scale functions, the architecture behind it, why we have zero gas fees, why that's so important. So really focusing a lot on more long form content getting out there. So, I think there's multi-levels here. So ambassadors, all the events, and as much content as we can is really where we're working to grow.
All right. Awesome. Thanks, Spring. And hey, and a shout out to the ambassadors. If you're one of the ambassadors and you're listening, we appreciate all the work you do. It's amazing to see all the posts going out and all the different languages and just see the communities you're building across the globe. So keep up the great work. Thank you. All right. So, I'm going to switch the order here on one, just so John and Connor can go every other. So we're going to go to Connor now. And so Connor, this is from Timothy. It's a really long question. It's in regards to a post from Vitalik Buterin. And Vitalik had so Timothy's summarizing, talking about amazing progress on EIP 4844 proto-dank sharding. And it's a crucial first step to massively lower fees in L2, helping it make affordable for much larger numbers of users to directly interact with Ethereum. Okay. And could you kindly can you explain, I think I'm going to summarize, there's a whole paragraph and it's a really good question, but the question is effectively saying, what is Scale's role as Ethereum evolves and the role of layer twos? What role does Scale provide and how is Scale unique and continue to add value as Ethereum grows and changes over time? And if there is a sharding mechanism that lives on top of the Ethereum proof of stake chain.
Perfect. Thanks, Jack. Yeah, that's a great question. I think first, just addressing the merge and Vitalik's roadmap, which I imagine this is what the question is encapsulating, everything with the surge, the verge, and the purge. We're excited for Ethereum. We're backers of Ethereum, and Scale in itself contributes back to the Ethereum network through staking the Scale token. And when Scale chains are provisioned, it's a smart contract on Ethereum. So for Ethereum to solidify its space in the blockchain world and specifically within proof of stake industries, it's important for Scale because we're growing on the back of Ethereum. However, I think really just to distill the question down, I think the question is there still a need for Scale? And what is the value of Scale as Ethereum continues to iterate and progress in its development? And the short answer is yes. As Ethereum continues to grow, it's going to bring on a ton of more users to it, which is great, but there's still a cap supply to the network. And so at the end of the day, there's always going to be fees involved with Ethereum, as small as they may be. And this causes friction for users at a cost perspective and just a UX perspective. At Scale for end users, there's always zero gas fees. So those users don't need to have that native token in their wallet and they don't need to pay. So, as a quick example, as Twitter continues to grow, you wouldn't want to continue to use it if you had to pay AWS in the background. So even though Ethereum is solidifying its space, there'll always be need for Scale from a UX perspective.
Awesome. Yeah, it's really, in a way, Scale is, some people would say, I think there's a lot of effort that goes into L2 to make sure Ethereum keeps capturing the same amount of value. But every single business as it reaches an economy of scale, price goes down. Okay. If you look at the price of servers and computing and look at Moore's law, right? Price will go down over time because of innovation. And Scale is able to help Ethereum still capture value because you have to pay gas fees to set up a chain, gas fees to rotate validator nodes, gas fees to stake, gas fees to claim staking rewards, gas fees to send Scale tokens. But on the other hand, people can pay a certain amount of Scale and rent a Scale chain. What that does is it still pays validators a meaningful fee that has upside, and stakers, it pays them for staking their token, but it dramatically reduces the overall cost. So what we're doing is we're reducing the cost of a transaction regardless of who the money goes to or who's paying it, we are reducing it by an order of magnitude compared to a per transaction model. And I think that's one of the biggest innovations of Scale, is that the price model is changing, and we're letting Moore's law in a different manner come into play in decentralized computation, while still helping Ethereum capture value and helping validators and stakers capture value through the Scale token and the functionality and utility of the token. Okay, thank you, Connor. And again, like, last thing I got to tell you, we talked to gaming devs, and they're like, if you're going to have 1 million transactions a day on a popular game, it's a big difference, 3 cents a transaction and 0 cents a transaction for the user, or 250,000 USD worth of Scale a year subsidized compared to 20 million of another token pushed through a relayer like Biconomy. It's just a massive difference. But we need to get this hit this order of magnitude and scale in terms of transaction volume, and anyways, I'm excited about that growth, and we're going to see it every day. So it's fun to have the team here talking about it live on the AMA. All right, going to John now. John, this is a question about security. I also want to make sure you can maybe give a little of your background on security as well as you answer this, because John's got a really awesome security background, worked for some great companies in Silicon Valley. So this is from @AricAdam. Security is the #1 priority. So how does it prove it's secure? What does it do, or does it do in terms of what does it do to prevent its compromise and avoid inconvenience to users? So basically, what does Scale as a community? Scale's decentralized and open source. What does Scale do to be as secure as possible?
Yeah, and to give a little background on my history, I was with Braintree, PayPal, Venmo as a solutions engineer. So we would obviously have to have strict regulations there on that front. And then after that, I joined a fraud and security company called SKALE Labs. So we would protect companies like GitHub if they had like a marketing budget or a marketing promotion where users could get server time, and people would manipulate that in regards to like spinning up these servers and mining, Bitcoin, and it wasn't going to its purpose. But it's very interesting to see like how hackers operate in terms of going to cheap data centers, using different scripts, just finding a solution. But with SKALE Labs, we put some measures in to monitor that and stop that from occurring. But to go to your great question, to sum this up, security is so important to Scale. From the very beginning, this has been top priority. And I think in today's environment, as Jack was highlighting, with everything that's going on, BlockFi, recently, everyone heard about that as well. And different hacks, it's so important to us. And we want to reassure the community we are doing everything we can. So just to highlight some things, would be, Scale, is obviously decentralized. All our code is available on GitHub. You've got access to the team in terms of if anything you need more clarity on. We do have a continuous bug bounty program as well that is operating. And obviously there's some great rewards there that are available. On top of that, we have continuous audits, not only from one particular auditing firm, some reputable ones, and we're continuing to do that as well, just to make sure everything that is being released is at top par there. So yeah, to sum that up, security, that's high priority for us, and we do everything that we can in that step, in that process.
Yeah, and it's an interesting position being on a core team of an open source project where you don't run any servers. So we do everything we can to just make sure the code is secure as possible. But at the end of the day, there are a lot of things outside of our control. So we, every core team is in a similar position. Now, one thing we do is we make sure that we do everything we can, like John said, audits. So I have this saying, it's always be auditing. it's kind of like the sales thing, always be closing, but we always audit, constant audits. And then they're also like the white hat program, which is awesome. And that's through HackerOne. If anyone's interested, if you're a white hat, go check out the SKALE bounties on HackerOne.
Hey, John. We actually had recently released the IMA security features, which I think is definitely beneficial for like time delays and so forth. And I think that's kind of addressing your question on, if things ever did, become questionable, we're just putting the right steps and features in place here from the product perspective to make sure that our dApps and users are happy as well.
Yeah, and when you're that's the beauty too of being in the Ethereum ecosystem is everything. This core code is all in Solidity, and so we're standing on the shoulders of giants. Now, Ethereum isn't, nothing's perfect, right? There's things that are found in lots of chains all the time that need to be fixed and resolved, but the goal is to assume that there's issues and always go and try to sniff them out. All right. Okay, next question here. Let's see. I'm skipping around a bit, but okay, one question. I'll answer this one. It's about this is from Tom. And what percentage of live dApps are commercially viable based on their current user base and operating costs? Is there enough data currently available to validate SKALE's decentralized business model, and what sort of scope would be there to amend it if needed? So that's a really great question. So there's two things I want to say there. One, this market's still early, but to me, and I think to a lot of people in the world who are not, the over leveraged people who are gambling, but people who are, making, strategic decisions on chains, there's and applications, there's a huge set of traction. So we see massive growth already happening in Web3 gaming, as well as Web3 decentralized social media products, NFT gated products for broader consumer use. I think the B2B applications are coming soon. DeFi obviously has a very strong purpose when used in the right way. And, we see this market as being fully validated. But we have a whole spectrum of partners. We have big companies down to little companies, and a lot of them, based off of where they are, have, commercially viable or not viable models. Now, as a reminder, any sort of Silicon Valley startup, all your traditional tech companies, none of them are ever profitable, usually until they're like past Series D. And I think Salesforce.com didn't make a cent of profit in a year until they were worth over $15 billion, or well over 15 billion before they ever were profitable. But you need to have profitable business models, but you can keep investing in growth, is what I like to say. So when we think of scale, it really all comes down to what are the costs to run the servers for validators? How much will people pay for those chains or those components or pieces of the servers in a rental model? And is it enough to incentivize people to stake tokens and for people to run nodes? Okay. Now, your question about can you amend this? Well, that's one of the beauties of this system is that we can all vote and change these things. And there's been a guarantee that there will not be any economic changes made to the core code until voting was in place. One thing that we've been waiting on is for an integration. So SKALE lives on the Ethereum mainnet, but we want to let people vote on SKALE chains because it's gas free. I think we've come to the realization that of all the balls that we're chasing and everyone else is chasing, that keeps getting deprioritized so that product can get built to help dApp developers. So most likely and our goal is to have a vote take place this year. And that's still the goal amongst the core team, the foundation, the validators, open source contributors. And so there will be a vote, is my understanding. We're not in charge of that. We're one party. And the mainnet will be used. Ethereum mainnet where the token lives will be used. And the beauty of this is then people could say, hey, we think chains should cost 30% more. The elastic price model should be this. And there's a public model that's going out. So anybody can go play with that model and actually go and change, speak and help change the business model. Because at the end of the day, if you don't have a viable business model, you won't be successful. It doesn't mean that you can't invest in growth like traditional companies do. And that's where inflation comes into play for most chains and their economic model. It helps support the fee offsets for, it's like a similar growth model to other traditional businesses, but it's very common. Scale has inflation, but each year that inflation goes down and fees need to kick in, and we're pumped about that kicking in a meaningful way in the next year, but that has to be voted on. We don't have the authority to implement that change.
And
I
can
yeah, go ahead.
there as well. Just running sales, I get the privilege of talking to a fair amount of companies for this, and I think what's helpful from a community perspective is to get specific examples. So kind of from a micro perspective, a specific example with Xord, they're getting up to already 2 million transactions a day and want to grow that. And even just at a penny per transaction, you're pushing $5-6 million in OpEx a year. So they already know that if they want to continue to grow, which they want to hit, even 5-10x of that per day on a transaction perspective, they need to take this approach of prepaid computational resource that we've been talking about. So not this pay per transaction as you grow, especially if you're in a network where you're fighting for that transaction space, but prepaying this in the front end so you know that. And this is what we're seeing with a fair amount of Web 2 companies move to Web 3 and more mature companies enter the space. They've got operating teams that are used to having an OpEx that they can forecast. And that's what made me really excited about Scale when I joined 3 years ago. And I think a lot of people here, we come from more traditional businesses and B2B SaaS. Myself, I come from finance and private equity and like looking at business models and economic structures. And that's one of our biggest selling points for talking to these larger IP companies or games or Web3 social media, is the fact that they can have their own scale chain and they know the cost of that chain. So we're already seeing the viable business model in hand, and we're excited to see it play out over the coming months and years.
Awesome. Thank you. Thanks, Connor. Okay, Connor, another one for you. When it comes to DeFi, is Scale involved in that? Then how can Scale be competitive in times of bear markets and general bad market sentiment about cryptocurrency? This, by the way, is from Anton Saputra.
Awesome. Thanks, Anton. Yeah, I'll cover the latter part of that and it somewhat ties to Jack's initial covering of FTX. And we want to bring it back up because it's relevant. But I think a lot of us that are working in the industry are frustrated about what's going on because people are conflating kind of decentralized crypto and these centralized actors that just happen to use crypto for their alleged fraud. And what we're excited about is as people start to off-ramp from these centralized exchanges to DeFi and really see the value of, not your keys, not your wallet, and want to actually have a centralized finance experience where it's very fast and it's free and the trading experience is great, but where you have true ownership. And so we think there's going to be another run-up of DeFi coming up because people are going to start to reevaluate where they should be doing their trading, where they should be doing their yield on the assets that they own. And our native DEX, our AMM, Ruby leverages the value of Scale, having zero gas fees and being able to trade extremely fast. And then also they're incorporating some novel approaches to NFTs and how that works from a user base. On top of that, I think John has positioned this before, but we are decentralized. So we don't run any of the nodes in the network, and therefore there's no opaque central authority that can come in and take anything of yours. And people are really starting to see the value of DeFi, and unfortunately it's through the collapse of this CeFi or CDFi. But we're excited to see what comes from the ashes of it.
Yeah, it's kind of ironic, isn't it, that in this world of decentralized Web3 and like blockchains, that the thing that messed stuff up was centralized finance and people not using the products. It just so happened to be that the kind of collateralized assets they're letting people trade were crypto assets, but it was really unregulated centralized finance that screwed everything up. And if these and hey, Terra was a DeFi project that didn't work. So DeFi is not perfect, but there are a lot of sound DeFi projects that are really successful. And, and I think you're right. Like people are going to eventually like quit throwing the baby out with the bathwater and recognize that, whoa, if we would have just used centralized exchanges, we'd be in good shape. We wouldn't have, somebody wouldn't have been able to go buy a yacht with my money and then hide out in some country like the 3AC people, or, the FTX people, like who knows, right? There's no collateralization happening on chain. And if you use Compound or Aave, what happens is people are borrowing in the same manner and getting leverage, but they have collateral. And if the price goes down too much, they get liquidated on chain. And so it guarantees the money is going to go back to somebody. And in this like world with unregulated centralized exchanges without proof of reserves, well, who's to say the money's there? So
totally. Yeah. It's been fascinating to watch DeFi go through these volatile periods, because if anybody's attuned to central markets, they have breakers, or they legitimately stop the market if there's too much volatility and things drop too fast. And people are concerned about the resiliency of DeFi, but in reality, it lives in a way more volatile market, and these main protocols, like Aave and Compound, haven't broken. And it's because of the collateralization of the assets on chain. And we're excited that this is just another proof point of why DeFi is needed, and really the relationship between DeFi and Scale, so that there's a great user experience tied to it too.
Awesome. Okay. Thank you. Hey, we're going to go, I'm going to skip to Spring, the question about marketing initiatives. And then, cause there's another one for you, Connor, and then I'm going to find another one for you, John. There are a lot of questions. I don't think we're going to get through all of them today, but, all right. So this is from Jennifer. Spring, what are the upcoming marketing initiatives? Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
An easy one. Go for it.
Yeah, big question, but a great one, because there's a lot going on in the marketing team. I would say I'll break this down into two buckets. The first bucket would be brand awareness education, and the second bucket would be a little bit more of audience-specific content and education. So for audience-specific, when I joined Scale a year ago, we were very developer-centric, which makes sense. Developers are bread and butter. They're using the product. They're learning why our tech is superior. So definitely going after them. We have a lot of content for them, a lot of education materials. But now we have other people coming to Scale. We have artists to participate in the marketplace. We have enterprise businesses coming to find the best solution for them. We have other people coming to see what Scale's about. So we need to have educational content for them so they can read it, they can understand, and fully realize our value prop. So we're putting a lot of effort into content and collateral for the sales team as well, to make sure those parties, everybody understands, what Scale's all about when they come to the website or when they talk to us in person. And then, the second piece about brand awareness and education, we're still becoming part of the conversation when it comes to scaling solutions, when it comes to the Ethereum ecosystem, and we need to break through the noise. So we do that with, we're creating a lot of good relationships with, the big players in the market. And some of those would be a CoinMarketCap, CoinGecko, EtherScan, places where people go to learn more about projects. So we're making sure we have, campaigns with them. We have things they need for people to understand Scale more. And, also just creating a lot more technical content. We did release a blog recently called How to Scale Offer Zero Gas Fees. And it's been by far our most visited blog. So again, that just shows that, people are curious about us. They want to know what we're doing. So we need to have the content for them. So I think those are our biggest initiatives right now, is just making sure, everybody fully understands what Scale's about, what we're offering, and having the collateral there for them to read on their own, DYOR.
And Spring, if the community does have like, hey, we want to learn more about multi-sig or something like that, what is the best way for them to kind of reach out? Because, we have done some videos in the past, the SE team and BD team and so forth. And, that I think has, got some, sufficient views on YouTube and the blogs and so forth. But just, for the community, if they have requests, like, is the best way for them just via the typical Discord channels, or like, how is it best to reach marketing there?
Yeah, I mean, we're on many channels. So, I feel like Discord is definitely where a lot of developers come ask us questions about the grant programs and different offerings. Twitter is really active, where people are sending us messages, asking us inquiries, and then we have our Telegram group too. So I think all of those are really good places where the marketing team's there. We're there to answer questions, send over multi-sig videos, or even, requests. Like if you guys want to hear something that we don't have for you, like let us know. Like we really need your input and want to make sure we have everything out there for the audiences. So, please feel free to come and ask us questions on, Discord, Twitter, Telegram, probably the best channels. And, give us advice too. We'd love to hear from you. We'd love to hear your input on things we could be improving on.
Awesome. Yeah, I think, there's a real mission to educate. And I can't tell you how often I'm at a conference somewhere and I'm talking to people about SKALE, and then they say, oh, I thought SKALE was just a side chain. And then they're like, this light bulb goes off above their head. And when you see that happen, it's like, okay, we got to keep doing this. And it just keeps happening. I think a lot of people listening today took time to learn about SKALE. Now, there are a lot of things to learn about in crypto. There are a lot of projects. There's a lot of different kind of mousetraps. This is one that I just have to say, like, our goal, we just have to keep getting the word out and keep educating people. But the good thing is there is a macro narrative around modular blockchains that have an app-specific blockchains, and that is just growing fast. So multi-chain networks like SKALE that pool security across chains is becoming a big trend. The good news is we already have it. So a lot of our competitors now are trying to build this functionality. Thankfully, SKALE has it and is ready to, already, shipping. And so we just have to educate more people. And it's, it's nice because, we can work in a very compliant fashion, educating people about how SKALE functions. And that's, if we do that, we'll all be successful. And the network will be successful and achieve its goals. Okay. Thank you, Spring. Okay. So, you know what? John, let's give this one to you. And Connor, you can back him up on this, but what are the main use cases you see for dApps going over to SKALE, and why do they choose SKALE?
Yeah, why they choose SKALE, I think we've highlighted some of those previously, but I think, obviously the S-Fuel zero cost there is a huge benefit. There's, recently I've been speaking to some of the gaming community, as I was kind of saying with the ChainSafe community call, and a lot of them are coming from like the Web 2 world to the Web 3 world, right? And they're like, hey, like, how can we make this kind of like a seamless experience for their users, exactly how it is for the Web 2 versus the Web 3? So, I think, some of the things that SKALE does is like we have the wallet side of things. So like we're partnering with like the Magic SDK and also with Web3 Auth. So users can, instead of using MetaMask, they can essentially log in with, Twitter or email there and get that experience. And also kind of what I was highlighting before, like, you can set it up so the, SKALE is so customizable, very modular, very flexible in terms of how you wanted to set it up and run it. And I think you can see that case with, some of the dApps that Connor and I are working with in terms of like how they distribute S-Fuel or how they, run certain operations. So, the distribution of S-Fuel is very seamless as well in that approach. But, SKALE just has so many benefits and different use cases. So we do very much, think of the SCs as more consultants, where we come in and like think of, just have a general discussion and just say like, hey, tell us about your architecture, tell us about your business model. And, this is what we've seen in the industry and this is what we think is best for you. And, we just learn from the dApps and their users and find a solution that works best. I don't think there is one model fits anyone particularly, but I think we are getting a huge interest from the NFTs, the dApps. You can obviously mint on SKALE all for free. So it's just per user case, and there's just so many things to touch on there. But maybe I'll pass to Connor in case you had some points there.
Yeah, I think the way to simplify that and kind of sum that all up is to look at applications that have high volume transactions and are looking for a clean UX. So if those are games, Web3 social media, Web3 data aggregation, and now we're starting to see enterprise come in, it's any application that wants to prepay for this computational resource and abstract that obstacle from their end user. So that end user doesn't have to pay for gas fees and doesn't even need to have a gas token. So right now you're seeing gaming, but we think that's going to continue to proliferate into other segments. But primarily we're focusing on gaming, Web3, and Web3 social media.
Yeah, the hubs model, we definitely see a huge interest there, hence setting those up.
Yeah, I think there's a great book by Jeffrey Moore called Crossing the Chasm. Suggest anyone who's interested in learning about business models and growth strategy read it. And there's a premise here in the book around the bowling pins. There's this analogy, and it's called the bowling pin approach. And any business, or in this case, decentralized project, when you're starting, if you try to be everything to everyone, you spread yourself too thin. And the way you market yourself, what conferences you go to, where you spend your sales resources, where you spend your community resources, where you spend your budget. And a big mistake people make, they try to market to everybody all at once. And with Ethereum, the market was pretty small for a while. We started in the end of 2017, beginning of 2018, really in earnest, like got up and running, and there weren't that many developers. So it was like, oh, every Ethereum app is the same, and they're not that different. Now the market's massively grown, and there's such a difference in the needs, requirements, and just team makeup and understanding of how things work between a blockchain gaming business or a Web3 social media product or an NFT marketplace or a traditional businesses that's implementing an NFT into their community engagement. And so one thing we realize is, our bowling pins for scale are blockchain gaming and high volume Web3 products. Okay. And again, because that's our strength, right? Is zero gas fees. And this prepaid computational model lets us do that in a way other people can't compete with, because at the end of the day, they have to pay validators by transaction. And it's a way less economically viable model than letting people pay for the computing resource. You can make a lot more money in a short period of time with 10,000 users if you're doing per transaction. But our goal is to have hundreds of millions or billions of users, and there's no way will ever scale unless there's a computational resource component payment as opposed to a per transaction component. Okay. All right. Great question. So let's see, Connor, let's go to, okay. So I understand, this is from Grahito. I understand that SKALE is purpose-built to help projects like SKALE Labs run their own blockchain. Does this mean that even though they have their own blockchain, their project is still 100% dependent on the SKALE ecosystem? So I think it's a question around if there was a Yuga chain or something like that, right? How does that work? Is it their own? Are they still sharing security? How are they connected to the rest of the SKALE ecosystem?
Yeah, that's a great question. And this somewhat fits into the enterprise and big IP that I was referring to. So as we've been talking about, we think a lot of applications are going to end up going into this hub model just because one SKALE chain has the breadth of capacity that these other networks have. But as we're starting to talk to bigger brands, in this example be Yuga or other ones, they're interested in having their own SKALE chain. They can effectively white label as this one Yuga chain. And the value of this is that their participants are all within that in that specific chain, and they can continue to build on top of that without fighting for resources elsewhere. However, they don't have to do the backend infrastructure. So they're still leaning on the validator community that's decentralized through node rotation and randomization that has a pooled security model across the entire network. And then the community tools that are helping them set this up so they don't have to run their own blockchain and they don't have to worry about any legal concerns of that or liability. or have the actual operational components of it. We're here as a bottom layer infrastructure, so big companies like this can focus on what they're trying to do, and that's build their community and build the application for their users to progress in that sense.
Awesome. Okay. Thank you. Okay. Here's a question. I think it just came in from Darkblade. I've been reading about other chains that are looking to be gasless. What will help SKALE stand out to compete with other potential gasless chains? So I'm going to take first cut, and then anyone else wants to jump in, go for it. So we've talked a lot about this, but at its core, SKALE is actually a decentralized gasless chain. There are a lot of gasless chains that aren't decentralized. There's just, companies running servers and try to charge fees in different manners. SKALE actually has a incredible economic model that is built deeply into the code. So if somebody has a blockchain that pays validators per transaction, and then they try to be gasless by using a relayer, it's just not economically viable. SKALE lets people in advance rent chains. And when they rent chains, what they're doing is they're effectively renting 1/8 of a subset of nodes in the network, a couple of randomly selected nodes. And these nodes also can be rotated and swapped in and out over time for security and collusion resistance. So, but at the end of the day, they're renting resource. Just like if I'm using Amazon doesn't charge me. If I use AWS, I don't get charged each time I have a transaction. They just charge me for the amount of the computing resource I use. If they charge me per transaction, AWS would be, so much more expensive. No one would use it. Okay. They don't charge you for the amount of times you do stuff. It's almost like if you rent a car, they charge you to rent the car for the month as opposed to charging you per mile. And SKALE is the same way. So other people that are gasless, they may say, hey, it's still a charge, but we're going to try to offset it. Well, SKALE it's way more cost efficient because you pay a fee, you get the car, you may not drive it at all, it might sit in the garage, or you might drive it, 100 miles an hour, but you pay the same amount on SKALE. Connor, you want to add to that at all?
Yeah, happy to. So I think the key thing for this too is this decentralization of it, and what we're seeing in industry, being decentralized is important, and having these transactions on chain is important. So I know a lot of these other gasless transactions are pushing things off chain, and either it's because they're centralized or they're just bringing it off chain in itself. And as you start to tie tokens, be it ERC20, 721, 1155, anything with a value to it, then you're going to need to have that on chain to be secure and responsible for those end users. So having this model that we have at SKALE really allows for these businesses to provide that for their end users.
Awesome. All right. Last question. Do we have time for one more? Okay, we do. We have a few. So I saw a question about roadmap. Let me try to find this. Who asked that? Is any?
You could do Command F, Jack. I think you'd be able to find it. I think it was.
Just want to give.
Shinchan 045.
Okay.
I can read it out if you like.
Okay, here we go. We're very interested. Yeah, Shinchan 045. Yeah. 045. We're very interested in hearing more about your roadmap. What is coming in the short term that is important for our community to know about? So one, the roadmap is always publicly available, even down to every single issue that's being worked on GitHub. But there's been a question from a lot of people about having more of a roadmap for people who aren't in GitHub to be able to read and view. And so Spring, maybe you could give a quick update on what, I know there's an initiative from the core team of saying, hey, let's pull out big things and update it once a quarter so people know what's coming over the next year at a high level, as opposed to reading, more of a technical description of the roadmap.
Yeah, we definitely had a lot of requests for it. I think it's, super important to be transparent and have it out there for anybody to just, quickly look at it and see what's coming down the road, see what's coming up in the next year. So we are working on a very high level one to include on the website, that will hit, I believe by quarter, we'll hit these goals we're trying to reach, tech updates, different features for SKALE, governance, all the important milestone dates will be included on this roadmap. So that, it's definitely in the works now.
Yeah. Yep. So get ready. That will be, it's there today. I mean, it's a fully transparent, everything from every code and every bug that's being fixed is there. And that's the way the project operates. But for those of you not in GitHub, we will have something for you soon. All right. Okay. Any last thoughts, John, Connor, Spring, before we close?
Yeah, I can close on something. So just say I'm really excited about closing out this year and especially next year. We took an approach to build a more complicated blockchain model that's built for the industry in 5 to 10 years. And I think what you're going to start to see is us leapfrog competition because of that. And you're probably already starting to see it in the data points. And this is just with about 4 or 5, roughly 6 months of data. So to have a full year next year where we have this working product of what we believe is the next evolution of blockchain is extremely exciting. And don't get worried about any type of market sentiment or macro views because we're building for this future and we're positioned to actually win these deals.
And I'd love to thank the community. You guys make SKALE what it is, and your input is so valuable to us. So, these sessions, if this helps, if you want this more regularly, if you want more technical videos, if you want more of a roadmap and more of a description on certain things, let us know. We're open, we're receptive to all these things. And I agree with Connor. I think there's so many exciting things that, we're soon to announce, and there's a lot of things that we're working on, and you can go and, look at GitHub or just reach out to us and ask us in the Discord and Telegram channels, and we'll answer those questions. But yeah, thank you everyone for joining us, and I'll pass it to maybe Jack for an end note there, or Spring.
Yeah, Spring, go ahead. And then
I also want to just add on to Connor's. We're, the marketing team, the comms team, we're super excited what's to come. It's a builder's market now, and that's what we do best at SKALE. So that, gives us time to create more education and things like that. So we're all really excited. There's a bright future ahead. We have a lot of momentum on the team, and, we're just grinding away over here. So looking forward to 2023, which will be here very soon.
Awesome. Okay, everybody. It has been our pleasure. Excited for the next steps here, and keep your eyes open for some on-chain voting, okay? All right, everyone. Bye.
Bye, guys.